What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! OCG TCG video. Today, guys, we are going to be going over the new dice cards that are set to release in Animation Chronicles 2022. Very excited to be going over these cards with you guys, so without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So kicking us off, we have Dice Dungeon, a field spell card with two effects. The first one being when this card resolves, you can add one Dimension Dice from your deck to your hand. Dimension Dice is the other card that we're going to be discussing in this video, so this card basically can help you search for that card, but we're not going to really say if it's good or not because we don't know what Dimension Dice does, so we're going to hold off on that first effect until we actually know what Dimension Dice actually does. But the second effect is at the start of the battle phase, you can make each player roll a 6-sided die, and if they do, apply these effects to each monster on the field based on its controller's result until the end of this turn. If you roll a 1, your monster loses 1,000 attack. If you roll a 2, it gains 1,000 attack. 3, it loses 500 attack. 4, it gains 500 attack. 5, the current attack becomes half. And 6, the current attack becomes double. So basically, odd number rolls basically give you a negative based on who is the one who rolled that dice. And you basically get a positive if you roll an even. So that's a pretty cool effect. I guess you can kind of say it's 50-50 on whether or not you're getting a benefit or a negative. But I will say this right now, this card is not really that good for two reasons. One, it's luck based, so you're not guaranteed to get a benefit, so that's never great. I always think a card is better when you obviously get the guaranteed that you're going to get a benefit from it. So obviously, you know, the fact that this is all luck based, it kind of does hurt the card in my opinion, or that's at least what I think. Anytime a card is luck based, I do feel like it is a little bit of a negative because, you know, you're not guaranteed to get it all the time. But, you know, that's not really the reason why it holds this card down. It is a negative, but not really that big of a negative. The biggest negative to this card is the fact that your opponent can use this card as well because both players roll that dice. And the issue with that is that they can get the same benefits that you can, which is never good in any scenario. Now, yes, again, it's luck-based, so it's not guaranteed that they're going to get the benefit. But here's the thing with it. Let's say they don't get the benefits. Guess what? If they have a Twin Twister, a Cosmic Cyclone, or any way to remove a spell or trap on your field, guess what? That negative they were going to get, they no longer get anymore. This card is basically vulnerable for any type of spell and trap removal, and guess what? If they do get the benefit from this and you get the negative for it and they do have like a Twin Twister, guess what? They get to save it because they're getting the benefit from the card. Why would they want to destroy a card that's giving them a benefit? Like, that makes no sense. The only benefit you're really giving out with this card is that maybe it will bait a Mystical Space Typhoon or something like that if your opponent actually, you know, decides to use it because they got a negative. So that's the thing with this card, is that the fact that your opponent can basically manipulate this card to basically give them a benefit is never good in my opinion. And overall, I just don't think this card is really that good in my opinion. Maybe it's going to be good for searching Dimension Dice if that card is any good, but I have a hard time seeing people playing this card because of the fact that I just don't think that second effect is that good at all in my opinion. But with that out of the way, let's go on to the next card and final card for this video, which is the card that I alluded to earlier, that being Dimension Dice. It's a normal spell card with one effect, that being if you control a card that has a die rolling effect, tribute one monster, special summon one monster that has a die rolling monster effect from your hand or deck. So, interesting effect. Let me real quickly go back to Dice Dungeon real quick, because obviously we didn't really go too much into the first effect because we didn't know the effect of Dimension Dice. So does this make Dice Dungeon a little bit more beneficial, a little bit more playable, if you will? Sort of. The only reason why I do think it's a benefit to maybe now play this card is for two reasons. A, it searches for Dimension Dice, and B, it gives you a card with a dice rolling effect on it, so that way you can actually activate Dimension Dice. So from that perspective, I do think it's a little bit better. I still don't think the card is really that good because I still do not like that second effect at all. So that's only the downside with it now, is that, you know, if you want to search for your dimension dice, you're going to have to allow your opponent to roll the dice for dice dungeons effect. So you still are potentially giving your opponent that benefit. So that's not really that nice. But, you know, I guess you can also just play 3 copies of this card and not really worry about dice dungeon. That can also work as well. But that means you have to now find another card that has a dice rolling effect that can stay on the field, so that way you can activate this effect. So I do think there is more of incentive to actually play Dice Dungeon, but it's not by a whole lot. But going back to Dimension Dice, the effect itself is actually not that bad, because if you do play Dice Dungeon, you play that card in your field zone, you search for your dimension dice, activate your dimension dice once you get a monster onto your field, you know, you tribute that monster, and then you get your big bad boss monster onto your field, as long as it does have that dice rolling effect, which there are some big ace monsters that you can summon that have dice rolling effects. So being able to search for that card and summon it to your field, or even keep it in your hand if you think that's beneficial as well, is really nice in my opinion. The only negatives I will say with this card is that you have to control a dice rolling effect. So if you don't play Dice Dungeon, you're going to have to find another way to do that. Maybe the monster you're going to tribute might help you pay for that cost. That's the only other way that I can see that potentially working. And then you can only special summon or basically search for the card as long as it has a dice rolling effect. So that does limit to what you can search, but that's what I kind of expect with search cards. Any search card that's generic shouldn't honestly be the case, in my opinion. That should never be the case. So it makes sense from that perspective. And if you're playing a dice focused deck, definitely play 3 copies of this card. This card is fantastic to be able to search for those cards. It does have its negatives when you're going for other decks that don't really focus on these types of strategies, but if you're focused on a dice rolling strategy deck, then I do think this card is fantastic, and you absolutely play 3 copies of this card. No ifs, ands, or buts. But for any other case, I just think it's an okay card in my opinion. But with that being said, that's going to be it from the new dice cards. So yeah, general thoughts on the new support. I just thought they were okay support. Here's the thing with me when it comes to this type of support, when it's like, you know, revolved around like, you know, rolling dice and flipping coins and all that stuff. I'm not too into them that much, if I'm going to be honest, because when I play the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, I always try to basically guarantee myself I'm going to be able to get to the play that I'm trying to do. I'm not really someone that focuses too much on luck when it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh. Not saying I don't like, you know, luck-based strategies of the sort at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just when I'm playing the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, when I'm actually running the deck, I don't really care for the luck-reliant strategy. So my opinion on this might be a little scrutinized than most people's thoughts on it, but kind of taking that perspective out of the equation. I do not think the support is bad. I do think there are some benefits if you play this in the right deck, especially if you do play Dimension Dice. I do think that's easily the best card from this new support. I can immediately see people playing 3 copies of this card. If you're playing a dice focused strategy deck, definitely you would be playing 3 copies of the card. Dice Dungeon, I don't really see that card being played at all, just because the fact that your opponent is going to be able to get benefit from that card just does not sound that great in my opinion. So in my opinion, when it comes to these 2 new supports, I do think if there's a card you're searching for with this, it's easily Dimension Dice, and you're easily going to be playing 3 copies of the card. No ifs, ands, or buts when you're playing a dice specific deck. But with that being said, that is going to be it for this OCG TCG video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the new dice cards. Did you think there were good cards, okay cards, or not really good cards at all? Let me know your guys' thoughts on, you know, just luck reliant decks, you know, dice rolling, coin flipping decks, etc. Let me know your guys' thoughts on those type of decks. Do you actually like those type of decks? Or are you not the biggest fan of them? Or are you just in the kind of mid territory when it comes to those? And if you do like those luck based strategy decks, what do you prefer? You know, dice rolling decks or coin tossing decks, or kind of a mixture of both? Would love to hear you guys' thoughts on this topic down below. But with that being said, that's going to be it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, guys, take care and have yourselves a great rest of your day.